Let's kick off another episode of the World Series of Politics podcast, where Brendan Bussmann and Brandt Iden march down the field on key political, legislative, and regulatory developments in the gaming sector. As these titans square off on the issues facing the industry, this podcast highlights the current opportunities and challenges for expansion and reform. Let's see what the game plan is for this episode of the World Series of Politics.
Welcome back to the World Series of Politics podcast. I'm your host, Brandt Iden, along with Brendan Bussmann, and we are cruising into summer, and wow, it's hot. It's hot here in Florida. I would imagine it's hot in Nevada right now. I mean, it's got to be warm.
It's a dry heat
out there. What is it out there?
It's a dry heat, though, Brandt. We don't have that humidity that you do down.
You don't have the swamps and the alligators. That's right.
Yes, yes. But coming back from the Midwest earlier, I will tell you the humidity is a factor, though.
You mentioned that. You were complaining. Yeah, for our listeners, Brendan was traveling to the Midwest. He was complaining about the humidity in what I would call the northern Midwest, so certainly nowhere near Florida. But I listened to his complaints nevertheless. Speaking of heat, there's a lot of heat going on in the gaming industry right now, and we have got a lot of news to report. Brendan, we've got a wonderful guest, a repeat guest, a fan favorite. I'm going to kick it over to you.
Yeah, well, I always, and the first time we hosted Congresswoman Titus, I was very proud to say I was bringing my Congresswoman on. She's still my Congresswoman today along the way. And welcome back to the World Series of Politics.
Well, thank you for having me. I heard you talking about alligators in Florida. We got some here, too, in Nevada, you know. That's just a different kind.
That's a very good point.
You're absolutely right on that. You're absolutely right. Well, you know, obviously there's a lot going on in Washington. And one of the things we wanted to talk with you about is a bill you had to introduce, one that you didn't necessarily intend to introduce, but sort of setting the stage of, you know, in the cover of darkness over in the Senate, as they were debating a bill that I think you referred to as the big, beautiful BS bill along the way. You know, there's this provision that got in as it relates to deductions on gaming losses. And you automatically, being the gaming caucus leader that you are, stepped up to the plate. But sort of tell us how this all came to be and sort of where things stand as far as your wonderful piece of legislation.
Well, thank you. You're absolutely right. It was not in the House version. It went over to the Senate, and that's where they put it in. So whenever there's any kind of legislation involving taxes or money, we have to look very closely for gaming, because you know as well as I do, there's still a bias against gaming. There's still a prejudice. And sometimes it's disguised. It doesn't just say gambling. You have to find it. So when the bill came back to us from the Senate, we were going through it piece by piece and found this reference where they changed the deduction of your losses. Now, for over 50 years, you've been able to deduct 100% of what you lose. So if you win 1,000, lose 1,000, you break even. Well, they changed it so you could only deduct 90% of your losses. Now, they were looking for money everywhere they could find it to cover their tax breaks. And this was a little pocket they thought would bring them $1 billion over 9 years, which I think is overestimated. So they changed it. Now you're taxing phantom money. So if you win 1,000, you lose 1,000, you can only deduct 900. You got to pay tax on that balance that you don't even have.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for your leadership on this. I mean, when this first came out, and I know that you've seen it, there's been an outcry among social media and, of course, professional players and others on this. I believe your quote, which was great, was you went overnight social media sensation when you introduced the bill. And you said something along the lines of, I've never been an internet sensation, but I am now. And I really enjoyed that comment. So that was very good. So thank you for your leadership on this. You know, you happen to mention the $1 billion number that was thrown out as sort of the fiscal note for this. I'm with you. I don't know that it would necessarily bring in that amount of money, but is that where this is pinned at, is $1 billion basically?
Yes, but I don't think it'll bring that in for a couple of different reasons. People will go to the black market or overseas, so that's where they'll gamble, or they'll not report. And so if you don't report, then you're not going to pay any taxes. So I think that amount will go less and less as people realize that they can't deduct the losses. So I don't think it'll bring in $1 billion.
You did a fabulous job last week. As I said to Dick earlier last week, the circus was in town on Friday when the Ways and Means Committee came in, and they at least afforded you and Congressman Horsford an opportunity to talk at that.
Yeah.
But how important is the bipartisanship of this, and knowing that we've got to get this across the finish line, not just in both houses, but you're going to need Republicans to come across the aisle to get this done.
Oh, no question about it. My co-chair of the caucus is a Republican from Pennsylvania, and we got him on board. And so when the chairman of Ways and Means said that he had been talking to the big gaming guys and realized that this was a mistake, now we kind of got him on board, got a couple of other Republicans. Nels got on board really quickly. And so it will be important. But I think in the Senate, too, you've had some Republicans say, oh, we didn't even know that was in there. Oh, I didn't even know what that was. So I think you'll find that there'll be bipartisan support. So that bipartisan support will be important, but I think we'll get it. And I've got a bill. Now you've got in the Senate, they're trying to fix the mistake they made by letting it out, and Cruz is on a bill. Now you've got Andy Barr on a bill that he put in for the racetracks in Kentucky. He's a Republican. So it doesn't really matter what the mechanism is, just so long as we get it fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, in my understanding of the timing of this is that given that the bill isn't enacted until the end of the year, we sort of have, until the next filing period, almost kind of a year and a half to maybe sort of get this fixed. Although we'd love to get it done before the end of the year, I think we've got some time to work this through the process. And given all the support that I'm seeing, I mean, I give it as you know better than anybody, it's always difficult to get things done, but it seems like we've got some good momentum on this. If I'm reading the tea leaves right.
No, I think so too. And the more you hear, the more you hear people saying, "Oh, it was a mistake. We need to fix it." And you're right; it doesn't go into effect until your taxes of next year. So we got a year and a half to do it. And at the end of every session, there's a kind of a Christmas tree bill. It's called a tax extender bill. Maybe it'll get put in there, or maybe in one of the appropriations bills. That's okay. It doesn't have to be my specific bill as long as we can just find some place to put it.
Well, and I always get nervous though, and I remember this back from the days when you were in the Nevada legislature. Sometimes that Christmas tree bill, the tree fell over and didn't get across the finish line. So, and we jokingly said this year in Nevada there wasn't a Christmas tree bill. So hopefully, we can get this across the finish line, whether that be in your version or anybody else's that obviously has made the notification that this has been a mistake. And it surprises me to some extent on the Senate, and obviously I know not everybody gets to read a very extensive bill like that, but they read the whole thing for almost an entire day. And granted, they went into the amendments afterwards, but at what point did they not just wake up and say, oops, sorry, we didn't?
Well, I felt that way too. And, the committee came out of the bill came out of the committee that Catherine sits on. So she certainly should have seen it. Now, the AGA has gotten involved. They're now endorsing the bill, and the Nevada Resort Association and some of the tribes. And you've certainly seen Derek Stevens come out very strongly for it. But initially, either the AGA missed it or they weren't too concerned about it. Now that they've seen this outpouring of people who think it's terrible, they've gotten on board. And I'd like to go back to that point about the social media. We talked about Medicaid. We talked about renewable energy. We talked about food stamps. Get a little response. Then we talked about sports betting and losing that deduction. Got 1 million responses. I think maybe this is the Democratic Party's hope for getting back those young white males that are on the social network all the time. But the big concern. And so I say it's good for the industry, it's good for the player, and it's good for the community to have that deduction fixed.
Yeah, no, this has been great. Well, thank you for your leadership on this. Switching gears a little bit, I wanted to ask about, obviously one of the other components of the bill is the no tax on tip wages. Obviously, that was a big issue for Nevada and the state. Included in the bill, obviously, there's a time limit on that. I believe it's 2 years or 3 years or something like that, and then it would have to be renewed. But what do you? I know that tourism's been a little slow this summer from some of the reports I've been seeing, but we got good economic indicators today. How do you think that this is going to, affect sort of the casinos in Nevada, and what are you sort of seeing going forward with that? Not only that provision, but just sort of your insights in general on the future of the industry in the state.
Well, on that particular provision, the real tell of the tape is culinary. They're supportive of no tax on tips, as am I. I have a bill to do that too, but it's not really done in a very good way. There's a cap on it, there's a time limit on it, there are certain deductions that you can't make, like with a married couple. My bill raises the minimum wage at the same time you do no tax on tips, so other people can benefit from it as well. They think this is a big thing that's going to get them a lot of votes here in Nevada. Trump takes credit for coming up with the idea. It's really the public that's been talking about this here for a long, long time. So that's in the bill. That's good, but it could be done better. However, now our tourism industry is down. There is no question about it. Heads and beds are down, air flights are down, gaming revenue is down. All of this is for a number of reasons. One is tariffs. Has made a difference because we import everything, that we don't make anything here except dreams come true. So everything else has to come somewhere.
I love that. I love that line.
Yeah.
Second thing, our biggest international tourists come from Mexico and Canada. And then third is European Union, and the growth market is China. So those are very much impacted by the whole tariff thing. We've insulted so many people. The rhetoric is not helpful for promoting tourism. And for people here at home, as prices go up, they don't know if they can take a chance on taking a big vacation. So they're not coming as much. And this is a time when we should be booming as we get ready for the Olympics and F1 and the World Cup. All of that should be benefiting us, but it's kind of tough right now.
Well, being here obviously in Nevada, I see it, when I watch what comes in indicators, and obviously the July numbers have been somewhat mixed over that, and we're seeing the earnings reports come in from everybody. So clearly, at some point we hope this sort of tails out and it gets an upswing again. One other question I wanted to raise while we got you here, and it's an issue I know that sort of hit us by surprise a little bit on some of this, but you've been a strong advocate on back to the federal level, is the whole CFTC stuff and the predictive markets.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously I know at this point right now we have a nomination on hold in the Senate,
Mm-hmm.
but, how do you see and what things are, would you advocate to the industry that they can do to get this back on track, as opposed to somehow thinking, as we've jokingly said on this podcast, that we're waiting for the citrus report to come in like the 80s movie in Trading Places did along the way.
Well, we first got involved in this when we saw them trying to take bets on elections. We thought it's not good to bet on elections. But this predictions market, you can bet on anything. You can bet on when the bird flies off the wire. You can bet on if Jesus is coming back next week. You can bet on, how many times the press secretary says big, bad, beautiful bullshit bill. Anything you can bet on. And what's happened is they are using that to circumvent sports betting laws, because they're betting on games, and that's supposed to be done and regulated by the states. And so if they can circumvent sports betting with this, who knows what other kind of gaming they can go into. Again, we've had to push the AGA to get involved in this. I think it goes back to that old mentality of gaming. Keep your head down, don't say anything, don't make any waves at the federal level, then they won't come regulate us or come tax us. But that approach just doesn't work anymore, as gaming's everywhere, except Utah and Hawaii. Well, you got to be proactive on some of these issues, and that predictions market is coming fast. You're right. Under this administration, it's even faster, because I think it's Kalshi that has Donald Trump's son as an advisor, and this person that they are trying to appoint is on one of the boards. They put that appointment consideration off a couple of times. So I don't know if they're going to ever appoint him or appoint somebody else. Who knows? The thing that's most surprising, and you got to educate people about this because it's confusing, is this is regulated as a commodity like in the agriculture department. And so once again, you don't think to look there for things that are impacting gaming, but this will have a huge impact, and it's moving so quickly and it's so pervasive.
Yeah, it's a topic that I feel like we talk about every week around here because there's always something new. To your point, I think I saw a wager today. I call it a wager. There was an opportunity to be able to play some sort of wager. I'm going to call it that on whether or not the Fed chair was going to do anything with interest rates today. So I mean, it's always something. So to your bird on water.
Well, Brandon, your defense on the verbiage on that, they used to have a billboard on the Las Vegas Strip that said, "Where should we put our next betting billboard on who's going to win the presidency last fall?"
You're right.
You know, the only thing I will say is, I know. The only thing I will say is that they do have a wager on the first congressional district in Nevada, and they have it going 87% Democrat right now. So, you know, I think that's a safe, good bet along the way.
Well, good. That's encouraging. So maybe those odds are okay in that situation.
Well, Congresswoman, we cannot thank you enough. First off, for being on the show, a repeat customer, a fan favorite, your leadership on the Fair Bet Act, your leadership in the Gaming Caucus, just an absolute stalwart for the industry. And I just can't thank you enough. So thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's always my pleasure to talk to y'all. Thank you for getting the word out. You know, these are complicated issues, and having y'all talk about them and having more people kind of relate to them makes a big difference. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us. And this has been another episode of the World Series of Politics. Thank you for joining us today, Congresswoman, and we look forward to seeing everybody at our next episode.
All right. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the World Series of Politics podcast with Brendan Bussmann and Brandt Iden. We'll be back soon for the next coin flip. This has been an IGB production. For the latest news, views, analysis, and data on the global gaming industry, head to igamingbusiness.com.